Well, it's the middle of summertime again. Time to take that family vacation or just get out into the great outdoors. I hope you've all had a chance to do that, but if you haven't, or you haven't had enough of it, I want you to come along with me. We're going to take a 600-mile motorcycle trip through the backcountry of Alaska. My name's Dave Whipple. You're watching Bush Radical. Well, it's the beginning of July here in Alaska. My wife Brooke is down in Delta Junction working on a piece of property, and I'm up here in Fairbanks working on the vertical log cabin. But I've been at it for days and days, and I'm ready for a break. So for the 4th of July weekend, we're going to load up the motorcycle, and I'm going to take you guys along with me down to the Denali Highway, one of the prettiest and most remote roads in the state of Alaska. Started off the trip by topping off the motorcycle in Fox, Alaska. Don't blink, you might miss it. From Fox, we took Goldstream Valley around Fairbanks, so you're never going to see any city. And from there, we're going to head down towards Denali National Park. Right now, we're headed down towards the town of Healy, which is just north of the town of Denali, which is at the gate of Denali National Park. But we're not going to go into Denali National Park. We're going to go the opposite direction and head east. We're going to take the remote and beautiful Denali Highway. I'm going to stop for just a second to wipe the bugs off my forehead. The temperature at Three Bears grocery store reached 66 degrees. We're about 10 miles north of the park, and it's dropped about 14 degrees since I left Fairbanks. Fun fact about the town of Healy, my brother Ryan and I helped pour the concrete for the bus garage there 23 years ago. A few minutes back I just drove past there and I would have showed it to you, but you know, it's just a big building full of buses. There's not much to look at. Now this is the town of Denali. This is where all of the tourists stay. This is where the lodges are, the restaurants, Link's Pizza, which has been here forever, great pizza. And it's a really quaint little place. Lots of crooked old buildings, lots of little gift shops and trinket shops, but it's in a beautiful setting and it's a great place to hang out for the day. This town is also a really good place to burn up some cash because everything's expensive. I stopped here to stretch my legs, make a couple phone calls, and wipe the bugs off the GoPro. I've got one of those plastic cases for the GoPro, but you think I brought it with me? No, I didn't. So I gotta stop every 10 miles or so to make sure there's no black flies or mosquitoes stuck to the lens of the camera. From Denali Park, we're gonna go about another 30 miles to the south to the town of Cantwell. That's the last place you can get any gas or groceries or grab a bite to eat. From there on, the Denali Highway is mostly dirt, and it's pretty remote, and you can't count on any services. Now, when I left Fairbanks, it was probably 80 degrees. But now that I'm down here in the mountains, it's pretty chilly. I'm going to bundle up and throw all my gear on for the rest of this trip. I was on this highway with Brooke 22 years ago, and we had a 78 Dodge truck. We took both of our dogs. I haven't been back here since. So it's going to be like seeing it for the first time. So here's the plan. We're going to ride this dirt road 135 miles to the east. It's right around solstice time, so we're definitely not going to run out of daylight. But if we get tired, we'll set up camp. If it's just good road and good riding, we might just ride all the way to the other side. We're going to see some stuff though. Now, I would love to take my time on this highway and stop at every creek, every bridge, every interesting feature, and really get the fine details of it. But this whole loop is about 600 miles in total. And if I stopped every time I saw something cool, I'd never get to the other end. Spending years up in Fairbanks, I'm always looking at the backside of these mountains. Or the other side, whichever way you want to put it. You can see back in that draw, there's a glacier. You guys see the bugs? Ironically, they're not biting yet, but they will. All right, back to it. About the first 15 miles of this road, the gravel is beautiful. It's
Looks like it's oiled almost. It's nice and smooth. But we're starting to get into an area where people don't pay as much attention to it. It's getting a little bumpy. Now the scenery is great, but you're going to have to take my word for it if I can't keep the bugs off this camera.
Check this out. This is a Susitna River. One of the truly huge rivers in this state. Check out this sweet old school bridge.
I take a few minutes just to look the bike over and make sure everything is still in order. Check the tire pressure. Just give it a good eye, because I'm about as far away from civilization as I'm going to get.
Time to grab another battery for the GoPro.
Seeing all the bugs, I'm sure glad I brought my thermocell.
You know, when I stop tonight, it's going to be bad.
I was right about seeing things for the first time. I don't remember any of this highway. I just kind of had a vague recollection of it. That's the good thing about getting older. You do something again you haven't done for 20 years and it feels like you're doing it for the first time. This river is the best example of that. Not only did I not remember this river at all, I didn't remember this bridge, and I'm pretty sure they were both here the last time I was through. Now, I love riding motorcycle by myself, but it's like being on the moon out here. It's pretty lonely and desolate on this highway. It's gloomy, and the weather looks like it's getting worse, and it's late at night, and even though there's people camped everywhere, nobody's on this road right now. The first vehicle I ever owned myself was a Kawasaki motorcycle, a KZ305. The summer of '93, I spent that whole summer riding motorcycle with a tent strapped to the back. When I was 18 years old, my buddy Dave Bassett and I took a 1,000-mile motorcycle trip. I couldn't even imagine one of my kids jumping on a motorcycle and taking a 1,000-mile road trip. I think I'd lose my mind as a parent. I had lots of different bikes over the years, but I sold my last one, a Honda Goldwing, in 2008. But having 2 young kids, that's why I gave it up for 15 years. I figured it wasn't worth the added risk. So now that both kids are graduated high school, I'm getting back out and getting back to it. I sure have been enjoying it. Camping and motorcycles just go together.
All right, guys, you got to check this out. Now, what you're looking at here is just a gigantic peat bluff, like a permafrost bank. I've been on rivers up here in Alaska where we'd stop and check bluffs like that. I found Pleistocene bison bones, and folks find mammoth bones. Some lucky folks find tusks. Depends on where you're at. You're not supposed to keep it, but you know, whatever. It's a pretty cool area. You got huge mountains over there. You got this big valley. You know what else you got too? You got baby ducks. When you got baby ducks and permafrost and great big mountains, well, if you got all those things, you're doing all right. Let's see what time it is. All right, it's 10:55. 10:55 on Saturday, July 1st. I tell you what, it's definitely been a long ride. I've got almost 300 miles today. I think I'll probably go to Paxton Lake tonight because I've been to Paxton Lake 1,000 times. It's a nice little campground.
It seems like every time I stop and film, I'll get back on the bike and I'll go another mile and I'll find a spot where it's even better. And then I'll film a little there, and then I go a little farther and I realize it's even better farther up.
We're just up here on basically the top of the world. There's glaciers coming down out of those valleys back there. You know, this is one of the things about shooting video that is just, it's just a depressing fact you kind of got to live with. You just can't get this stuff in a camera. It doesn't translate.
Farther down the highway I got, the higher up in elevation I got. Pretty soon there were snowbanks everywhere. And the temperature just kept dropping and dropping. And everywhere I looked, it looked like it was raining or snowing.
Oh, look back in that valley. Back there in that valley, the sun's shining through on the mountains. I haven't seen the sun for hours. If you look around here, there's snow everywhere. You could stop pretty much anywhere you want. Grab yourself a cooler full of snow. And it's the 1st of July. So I know we're up here pretty high. This last hour of riding has been cold. Man, I'd love to be out there in the sun. I'd like to get down out of these mountains so I can find a place that's got some trees. I can set up my hammock and get some sleep. I don't really want to ride all night long. That is the best sight I've seen in a long time. Hard to get in the camera, of course, but wow. That is absolutely fantastic. That's why I rode 300 miles. Right there.
Well, I rolled into Paxton Lake Campground at about 20 minutes after midnight on the 2nd of July. I got the very last site in the entire campground, about 45 different campsites, and it was reserved, but it had been reserved for the 1st of July, not the 2nd, which it was at that point. So I figured I had at least a decent legal case that it was my campsite, even if there was somebody else that thought it was theirs if they pulled in later. But luckily nobody did, so I never had to have that discussion. I got a fairly good night's sleep, although I got rained on quite a bit. But what I actually needed more than anything else was 2 trees to string a hammock in, because that's the camping kit I brought. I was rolling out of the campsite at about 7 o'clock in the morning. I probably got to sleep about 1, so about 6 hours worth of sleep. But it being the 4th of July weekend, I wanted to get some miles knocked out before the traffic got bad. Now, last night I rode the entire Denali Highway from one end to the next. Then I hit the Richardson Highway and went a few miles to the south to get to this campground. Now I got to backtrack a little bit to get to that intersection where the 2 highways come together. Then I'll just keep going north. Last night on the Denali Highway, I didn't see anything to speak of for wildlife, except one moose, way up in the high country, and he was hanging out by a big snowdrift. I wonder if the bugs were getting to him. The Denali Highway ends at a little place called Paxton. Now when I say a place, I mean a place. It's not really a town. It's got this huge old rundown hotel, which really has a creepy look to it. And I've seen this place opened and closed half a dozen times in the last 25 years. Right now, I think it's in its closed phase. Somebody will buy this thing because it's in an amazing location. They'll try to make a business out of it, and then they'll go belly up. And then there's a little road crew station. About another 10 miles up the road, you come to Summit Lake. 20 years ago, when we lived in Fairbanks, I used to work in the wintertime for a Volkswagen cold weather testing group. We'd drive Volkswagens all day long and test them in extreme cold weather. One of the groups that drove, this one driver was picking his nose and wasn't paying attention, and he launched an experimental Volkswagen off the road, through the air, and onto 4 feet of ice. Smashed that car to pieces. He was alright, but he must have lost his job because none of us ever saw him again. We were all pretty happy to see that car destroyed. It didn't have very good heat, and none of us liked to drive it. Now, this little pull-off is something that just seems to be a local thing. I don't know that all the tourists know about it, but anybody that's running down to Valdez or down to Glen Allen, a lot of folks will stop here and fill up their water. It's a spring that's just running right out of the side of the hill. There's a culvert, and then there's a chunk of pipe. Not very aesthetically pleasing, but I'll tell you what, the water is perfect. Back about 2007, Brooke and I got a caribou up in these hills. Well, I'll let you in on a little secret. People come from all over the world to go to Denali National Park. But this drive between Paxton and Delta Junction, in my opinion, is better. As opposed to tour buses everywhere and traffic coming up from Anchorage. Over here, there's not much travel, not much traffic on the road. You get people going back and forth down to Chitina to Dipnet, or people going from Fairbanks to Valdez and vice versa. It's real quiet. The road's real good. It's just nice. Not only is this area full of awesome mountains, it's got some really interesting ones. This is Rainbow Mountain, one of the most recognizable mountains anywhere in the state. It's really colorful when the sun's out, and it's just jagged, and the hillside is just covered in scree. A river flows through this valley, and in the wintertime it just keeps overflowing, and it turns into like a giant skating rink. I was down here one time and saw a herd of caribou just skating around on that overflow ice. They couldn't get any traction at all. If somebody would have went out there with a pair of crampons or even golf cleats, you could have caught them by hand. Oh, it sure is nice to see that sunshine. A lot of times it's like this. Down here in the mountains, it'll be stormy and just kind of ominous. The weather's always changing. A lot of rain. But when you start heading up towards Delta Junction, it's dry quite often. And I'm about to pop out back into the sunshine, and man, I'm so ready for it. Now in reality, it's just been a dozen hours or so since I left home. But the weather has changed so much, and I've been on such a desolate part of the road system. It feels like I've been out here for a month.
Ooh, sunlight. I haven't seen sunlight for 14 hours probably. It's just wonderful. You guys gotta check this out. Now that is pretty amazing. Whew. My butt is sore. We're rated at about 400 miles. Well, it looks like there's some rain gonna blow right in over top of my sunshine. So I think I'm gonna get down out of the mountains while the getting's good, because I've managed to dodge the rain.
In this valley, there's some bad weather, and it's headed the same way I am. So I'm gonna move up the road a little bit where it's clearing out. How about that for a view of the mountains? If you look down at that river, you can see the silt blowing in the wind.
Pretty good scenery.
Another 30 some miles up the road, I'm back in Delta Junction. Brooke and I and the kids lived here in Delta Junction for about 6 years. We're gonna meet up here at the steakhouse and have ourselves a garbage omelet, which is the best omelet they have. But son of a gun, the place isn't open. Brooke showed up a couple minutes later and Mickey right behind her. Since the steakhouse was closed, we went to the gas station, Delta Petrol Wash, and got breakfast burritos. Then went over to the park and hung out for a while. We're all busy shooting videos, so we all sat around and talked shop.
Shots are easy, like okay, because somebody commented, they're like,
I'm so glad.
Mickey's decided now that he's out of high school, he's going to move back to this area. He still has quite a few friends here. He's put a down payment on a beautiful piece of property with a good view of the mountains, and he's going to build himself a little homestead there. He also started a YouTube channel, so you can follow along and see what he's up to.
So we've had our breakfast. Brooke's gonna go back down to our property in Delta. Mick's gonna go work on his property. And I'm gonna ride back to Fairbanks and get back to work on the cabin. So we're all going different directions, but don't forget, our son Mickey is filming everything he's doing on his new piece of property. So don't forget to check out his channel, Betting on Alaska. I'll leave the link down in the description. And you can watch all his misadventures as he's figuring out building
I appreciate that.
and mountaineering all in the same short period of time.
An hour later, I'm back on the road, headed back to Fairbanks. And luckily, I'm still missing the bad weather. Even though it's 24 hours difference, it feels like I've been gone for 6 months. Summer seems to just fly by. And life in general kind of seems that way sometimes too. So when you get a chance to get out and do something, it's real easy to say, yeah, maybe next time, which turns into maybe next year, and then maybe never. I think it's best to just jump on it. If you get the chance and you've got the time, go do something fun. I was working on the cabin the last few days, and I was also packing the bike up, and I was still on the fence about going. It's kind of a micro vacation, but on the other hand, that trip is a world-class destination. People come from everywhere to ride that highway and see those sights. You know, it's easy to take it for granted because it's so close, and it's also a lot to cram in 24 hours. I'm glad I did it.
Whew. Wow. I hope you guys have had as much fun on this trip as I have. Be radical, eh? See you soon.